The Toddcast podcast on toddhancock.ca.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be on the Toddcast here in Vancouver, Canada. Huge fan of your band, dude.
Thank you. Yeah, we still love what we do. We're very fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, it shows in it as well. For this, because we've talked before. I used to do the afternoon show at CFOX, the Vancouver rock station. So we've talked before in the past, but for this time, I kind of want to start off at the beginning and talk about before you were in bands and the music that was like in your house as a kid growing up. What were the bands that your parents were playing you?
Well, I had awesome parents, and neither one of them were musicians, but they were just music lovers.
Yeah.
And my dad would after dinner, we had a basement. And I grew up in West Virginia, and we had a big basement that was like the family den, and my parents had this rad 2-channel stereo with a turntable and all their records, and instead of going to what my dad called watch the boob tube after dinner, like
Right.
most American families did in the 70s, he would take, my mom and him would take Shelley, my sister, and I downstairs and just play records instead of watching TV. And my dad was just big on all the 50s doo-wop stuff and, Elvis Presley and a lot of the country guys, Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson. And my mom was like the rocker, and she turned me on to the Beatles and Stones and Creedence Clearwater Revival. And I remember one of the first records I ever played along with when I got a drum set was the best of CCR, Creedence Clearwater.
Yeah.
And so that classic rock and blues vibe was pretty much what I grew up on as a kid until I was like 9 years old, and my older sister, who was 2 years ahead of me, she gave me her Rush Hemispheres record. And
boom, Rush! Whoa, mind blown.
Yeah, dude, talk about a life changer. I mean,
straight up.
Everything else fell to the wayside.
Yeah.
And do you know, I still have that Rush record, and it's on red vinyl. Rush Hemispheres. I still have that exact album my sister gave me all those years ago,
Amazing.
in 1978.
Yeah.
But and then after that Rush record, I went to my sister. I'm like, because I was playing, there used to be a thing in America called K-Tel Records.
I remember those,
And
the compilation discs or whatever, almost.
Yeah, they were like compilation records. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you would see a commercial on TV, and I'd be like, "Mom, order me this record. It's got the Funky Worm by the Ohio Players or whatever,
Yeah,
And so my sister would come in, and she was only like 11 or 12, but she was already, listening to Rush and stuff. And so one day I was cranking one of my K-Tel Rocks records, and she came in and she said, "You know what? You gotta listen to some real records." And so try this, and it was Rush Hemispheres. Changed my life. Well, after I wore that record out, then I went into my sister's room. I'll never forget it. And I'm like, okay, my music sucks. Rush rules. And so she goes, well, check this one out. And she hands me Led Zeppelin 2.
Right.
And that's when I was like, oh the shit was over. I asked my parents for a drum set that very day. I'm like, I know what my birthday present's going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
So,
That's
She
awesome.
also turned me on to weed. So thank God for my big sister.
Aren't big sisters and big brothers the best?
Yeah.
I love it. What was your first concert?
Judas Priest and Iron Maiden,
Wow.
1981 Point of Entry tour.
Wow.
And Iron Maiden it was the Killers tour for them, so they still had Paul Di'Anno, Clive Burr on the drums.
Right.
And oh my God, another life-changing moment for this kid.
Of course. Right. Talk about setting the bar.
Oh my God. And I'm sitting there, and it was my first big concert, and my sister again took me, and we're sitting in the Capitol Center where the Washington Capitals play hockey, and all of a sudden there I am. I don't know. I was like 12, 13 maybe, and we're sitting there, and times were different, And a stranger beside me hands me a joint, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what was this?
Yeah.
I'll never forget it, man.
That's great.
Another life changing, career affirming moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Are you a big fan of the rock documentaries? Have you checked out the Eagles documentary on Netflix? It is amazing. If you haven't, there's a really good, as a drummer, there's a really good Ginger Baker documentary. So good. The Stones is really
Dude,
good.
I haven't seen the Eagles one, but I did see Ginger. What a crazy dude, right? He's
Like,
so awesome.
I know. Beating people.
He's
and
actually crazy. He's crazy.
Yeah. Like,
I love it.
so, like, I'm a drummer as well, so it was very, all right. So good. Are there
Yeah, so good.
Are there plans to release a documentary for Godsmack? Like, do you guys record much video while you're on tour or put something like that together?
You know, there's been one in the making for years now.
Right, of course.
We made the one called Changes years and years ago, and it was when I first joined the band, and so you know it covered a lot of ground from pre-me to after, you know, around the 4 record. And so we'd already gone through, you know, a bit of ups and downs, and as you do in this business.
Right.
And then like I think it was around the Oracle, I think it was our 5th record, we started just filming with the idea that someday, you know, we would do another full-length movie, like documentary style.
Yeah.
And so it's been a work in progress for like literally 10 years now.
Yeah.
We have all this footage, and we've continued to do interviews. We just recently did with the same director guy, and it's one of those things where we're taking our time and letting time pass.
Sure.
And so yes is the answer to that.
Yeah. Fantastic, dude. Yeah, I love that stuff's on the back burner. As a fan, I would love to see it.
There was some definite moments in this band in which we weren't getting along. You know, it's like a marriage. But
Yeah, sure.
you know, our most proud accomplishment of all the, you know, #1s and gold records and all that bullshit is the fact that we've made it 20 years in this business, because it's hard enough just to get signed, let alone be a band for 20 years.
Right.
And so the documentary is going to show some really real stuff that happened. You know, there was a point in this band where our guitar player Tony and Sully weren't even talking on tour for like a year and a half.
No way.
It's just
Wow.
awkward moment. Yeah.
Wow.
And so I'm even like wondering, oh my God, some of these interviews, yeah, what's going to be said? You know, I'm like, God. So I'm looking forward to seeing that someday too.
Yeah, yeah, great. Of course, when I mentioned you were going to come on the podcast, there's a ton of Godsmack fan questions for you, and I want to make sure I get through at least a few of them. We've only got another 10 minutes or so. Lester wants to know, how are you enjoying branching out to the Apocalypse Blues review?
I just live for that music.
Yeah.
I tell you, that band to me is my heart and soul on my sleeve, and it's the complete opposite of Godsmack, which is why it's so special. And on the other hand, is why it makes me appreciate Godsmack and the success that we've had. You know, typically we make a record every 4 years, Godsmack, and you know I attribute our success for staying together for 20 years to taking a year off every 4 years. So
Sure.
So basically, we'll write and record a record, and we're blessed enough to have a whole year to do that. There's never a rush. And then we'll go out and support it for a year and a half to 2 years. Then we'll take a year apart, and Sully will do solo work, and Tony and I will do the Apocalypse Blues review.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that getting away from each other, you know, for a whole year, and then getting back together, then all of a sudden the band feels fresh. So every 3 years we get a moment to step apart from each other and do, you know, soul work, and then get back together, and it lights a new fire under our ass. So if there's anything, that's the secret to Godsmack's success, I feel, is being able to, you know, be blessed enough to take some time apart.
Yeah.
But,
That's cool.
But yeah, the new Apocalypse Blues review, by the way, comes out. Here's a shameless plug for you.
Hit it.
On July 20th, The Shape of Blues to Come. We are the heaviest blues band on the planet, and our intent is blues.
Awesome.
So, you know, no matter what, we can't help our influences, but we're trying to write traditional blues music but it turns out just sounding so heavy, and I'm so proud of it.
Very cool. Looking forward to that. Karen says, what shows are you binge watching lately?
Well, I like Fear the Walking Dead, of course. I still love The Walking Dead also.
Yeah, great show.
And, my God, what else? What's my new one? Ash vs. Evil Dead. I've been loving that.
Okay, yeah, it's so good, right?
It's so funny and so good.
It is so
and
good.
Of course, I was a huge fan.
Yeah.
You know, I do like Stranger Things.
Yeah, I like the first season better than the second, but yeah, it's good.
I'm with you there, too. The first one blew me away.
Yeah.
And the second one, I was, okay, it's great, but that first one had something special, right?
Totally. Norm wants to know, who's your favorite superhero, and which superpower would you want to have?
Well, you know, I'm partial to Deadpool.
I know,
think
right?
the whole world is. Because Ryan Reynolds is the man. He's just the funniest, baddest ass dude ever.
Yeah, man. Like, could they pick the better actor? I don't think they could have.
No, he's perfect.
Yeah, he's great.
He's perfect.
Yeah, and of course he's from Vancouver, so there's an affinity for this kid in town, and you know they filmed a lot of the movies. You're like, holy crap! There's the North Shore Mountains. There's Stanley Park. There's the Georgia Viaduct. You know, as somebody that lives in Vancouver to watch those movies, it's cool to see.
Wow, I did not know that Ryan Reynolds from there.
Yeah.
Or Deadpool's from there.
Yeah.
Is it Deadpool or Ryan Reynolds?
Well, Ryan Reynolds is from here, but I think that they say that Deadpool is a Canadian superhero.
Wow, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely my favorite superhero movies.
Yeah.
As far as a superhero, I would have to go with the Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I've always, ever since I was a little kid, always just loved the Spider-Man.
I know, tough to get away from the classics. What power would you want to have?
I would probably go with the invisibility. You know, the invisible man. Then I can be. Oh my God!
A little fly on the wall, and
that.
I know, like how badass would that be to be invisible? Come on.
I know. Anybody mess with you, just turn invisible, and you could swat them from the back of the head. Who knows? It's a great power.
It is a great power, yeah. I think you could probably Google this one, Drew, but I'll ask anyway. Drew wants to know, how did you come up with the name Godsmack?
Oh, that was before I was in the band. There was a drummer. His name was Joe Darko, and he was one of the original drummers. They went through a few, and Joe got a big cold sore on his lip, right? And you know that's like a herpes sore or a cold sore that people get on their lip.
Yep.
And you know they always strike. I get them. You know, I've got them since I was 6 years old. So they strike at the damnedest times. Like right before we'll do a video shoot, I'll get one or whatever.
Of course.
So all
picture
these
day at school and shit. Yeah.
Yes. So you know, before one of the first band's photo shoots, you know, Joe Darko came to practice, and he's like got this big sore on his lip, and then the video shoot was the photo shoot was 2 days later. And so Sully looks at him and says, ha ha, and he's laughing at him. You got a photo shoot, you got the canker on your lip, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as karma has it, the 2 days pass, and then they show up for the photo shoot, and Sully got one on his lip. And so, they had a list of names. At the time, I think they were called The Scam or something, but they didn't like the name, so they had a list of names. And Sully had written down Godsmack from the Alice in Chains song.
Okay, yeah.
On their, I think their second record had Godsmack Dirt, but and so that was one of the names. And so from the herpes thing, when Joe saw Sully with the thing on his lip, he goes, "Aha, you know that's from you making fun of me. So you got Godsmacked." In other words, you know, if what comes around goes around, you make fun of me, then karma's going to turn around and smack you
and boom,
and give you a cold sore. So
right.
That's kind of how it came about, you know.
Okay. Trevor wants to know, what are your thoughts on legalized marijuana?
Oh, do it. I've been smoking pot since I was 13.
I know, right?
And I got to tell you, you know, I am a recovering alcoholic. I've been sober for 2.5 years almost now. And I still smoke the weed, and you know the weed has never given me any kind of problems in my life like alcohol. You know, I've never been mean to anyone. I've never, you know, driven under the influence. It's a very medicinal drug, and I use it to, just make me relax. For instance, after a show, when my adrenaline's still rushing through me, and I'm trying to get to sleep on the bus. So I take a couple puffs of weed, and all of a sudden I'm watching a movie, and I'm sleeping like a baby. And so I'm a very, very strong advocate for marijuana rights. And again, I don't, so people know I'm not a hypocrite. Alcohol, which is totally legal, of course, almost killed me. And from getting busted and drunks in public and fights, getting my ass kicked, and just things that I would never do as a human, alcohol, because I lose control of myself, and nothing against drinking, by the way. And in my business, I picked a rehab spot called Recovery Unplugged down in Florida. And Richie Supa, who was in Aerosmith for a couple of years, actually, and he was with them. He wrote the song Pink and won a Grammy with Aerosmith. Anyway, They kicked him out because he got on drugs. So he cleaned his shit up, started this program. And so when I was spiraling down into the dark moments and realizing I'm an alcoholic, I reached out to Richie and went to his rehab joint, and he taught me how to be able to be happy around people that are drinking when I'm going sober. And that's the toughest thing for somebody in my job, because we're surrounded by drugs and alcohol. It's part of rock and roll. It always has been. It always will be. And so I totally can be around all my friends and even encourage drinking now, but because I have weed, so at least I have something that I can use that gives me a little bit of a buzz, but I'm still in total control of myself.
Yeah.
So I know that was a long answer, but I'm passionate about that shit.
I love it. I'll ask you one last question for Ryan, and it's a good one. He goes, I'd ask him if it's hard to play drums for Sully, since Sully's such a great drummer as well. And I do remember seeing the Vancouver date that you guys did with Metallica, it was maybe 10 years ago or whatever, maybe more. And the drum off that you and Sully did was easily a highlight of that show.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. It's not hard to play for Sully. One thing that people may not know is that I met Sully Erna, at least, I don't know, we're trying to remember, it was like 12 or 13 years before he even started Godsmack.
Okay.
And he was in this band called Lex Luthor, and they had opened up for one of my old bands, Wrathchild America, actually. And so we had hit it off right away back then and kept in touch throughout the years. And I was, when Universal and Atlantic and Epic and all the major labels were sniffing around Godsmack in Boston, I was living in California, and I was playing for a punk band called Amen. And Sully called me and said, dude, we're getting a major label. This shit is on. Come join the band. And I was like, shoot, man, I just signed a deal with Ross Robinson and Roadrunner Records with my boys, Amen. Sorry. And he's like, oh, dude, so they got Tommy Stewart, and the rest is history. But, it worked out for me, in the end, because I got to live my punk rock life, and then they got major success, and then I came in. But as far as the actual answer, no, it's not hard, because, luckily, why I brought it up that I know Sully for so long is when I first met him, he was very smitten with me and my playing. He loved it. Right. And so he looked up to me as a drummer, so that all those years later, when he was successful in Godsmack and I did join the band, he already had a huge amount of respect for my playing. And so it's not hard for me to play for him because he loves my playing so much.
Right.
And, the only time it would get frustrating is, he is, make no bones about it, this is his band. He handpicked all of us. He is the leader, the visionary of the band. So the only hard part of playing for him is sometimes in the studio when I've worked on say a nice fill that I really spent time on and thought I had this killer fill, and he says, yeah, no, I don't like that one. Try another one. and I can't really argue. Well, no, right. This one's great, dude. So I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because it is true. I mean, he has chops. The kid can play.
Yes. Yeah, he's great.
Awesome, Shannon. Thank you. I know you're on a schedule here, so I'll wrap up. Thank you again for taking the time here to join us in Vancouver on the Toddcast. Godsmack's social media accounts are simply @Godsmack, and we will see you online.
All right. Thanks, Todd.
Subscribe on iTunes at Toddcast Podcast.